Welcome back to the Always Reading Book Club. It is your girl Kiki Reader, and we're starting a new series today. So, the new series that we are starting, it's called The Billionaire's Love Story. It is by Lily Zante, and book one is called The Gift. We meet Tobias Stone. He is the hedge fund bigwig who is over Stone Enterprises. He's the owner. So he's worth a ton. He is at a charity thing that he's now thrown for about 2 years in a row, where he takes some kids from adoption agencies. They come to this really nice toy store and they're allowed to pick out one toy that they can get. So he really likes doing this event. We find out he was pretty poor as a kid. Now, we don't know if he was an orphan, possibly, or what exactly is going on. But this seems to make him extremely happy. I mean, listen, it should make you happy to, help people, okay? But it seems a little bit more personal. But at this point, we don't really know if he was adopted or what the situation is. Now, he has an assistant named Candace, all about making sure that he looks good in the press. And so for her, she's like, we got to make sure you get good pictures. This is going to be great for your profile. It's going to give some real credence to the whole, you're big on philanthropy. And she even threw in how this might even get you put on the most bachelors, whatever it is, list. So we find out he doesn't really care about that. He prefers to pay for sex. He feels it's transactional and therefore it kills any type of emotions that could come about. So he's about to leave because he's wanting to get out of here because there's this huge deal that he's trying to close with some people in Hong Kong, and he needs to get back to the office to try and handle it. His right hand man Matthias is there, but he's a bit of a control freak, our boy Tobias, so he wants to be involved as well. So he's trying to get back to the office, and then he sees a little boy that he saw earlier that was peeking through the window. And so he gets really angry at first because he's like, where's this child's mother? So he goes and opens the door and tells the little boy, you can come in. And the child looks kind of confused, like he wants to come in, but then he probably shouldn't come in. And then he does see a woman facing away on a phone, and he's assuming that's probably, the mother. And so as soon as he was about to come in, she comes over and she's like, Jacob, we can't, you know? And Tobias is like, he can come in if he wants to, you know? So eventually the mother caves and she's like, okay, fine, 10 minutes, that's it. The little boy goes and he plays with the Iron Man, and Candace comes up to Tobias and it's like, you can't just let anyone off the street up into this private event. And he's like, what is wrong with letting one more child in, you know? And then Candace is all about image. So this is where I didn't understand what she was freaking out about. If the whole idea is for him to look charitable, why would you want to stop him from looking even more charitable for one more kid? That didn't even make that. I'm like, that doesn't make sense, you know? But her motives are not good, and it's clear, right? Because she has no reason. First of all, I'm a little perturbed with Tobias because this is your event. So it doesn't matter what she says. You shut it down and you just simply say, if I want to have everyone come in, then I'll have everyone come in because I'm throwing the event, you know. I didn't really like how he was trying to say, like, it's only one more kid. It's not that big of a deal. I feel like he should have been a little bit more sterner with her because I felt like she was, that was a really piss poor attitude for her to be in. You know what I mean? It's coming up to Christmas. It's like, well, come on. Why not want to have one more kid in? But she had the nerve to make the comment that if you let one in, then everyone will want to come in, and it's like, it's not a club, bitch. This is an event. That's a charity. He's giving away toys for kids. Stop. So already, I don't like Candace, and old boy should have had more of a fucking backbone. To me, Tobias should have. Even though he told the little boy he could come in, he did. But I feel like he should have went off a little bit. Maybe I just wanted him to go off a little bit more on Candace. So Tobias goes over to the kid. He's talking to him and stuff, and he had said, you can pick out a gift or whatever. And he had found out the guy really loves color. The little boy really loves coloring books and things like that. And then all of a sudden, Candace must have said something to the mom, and she comes over, and she's like, "We have to leave because we're not a part of this event." And so she gets her kid, and she's like, "We got to go." This pisses off Tobias, but at the same time, he didn't want to make a huge scene. He did say to Candace, like, "Why can't you just let them be here?" But I'm like, you could have said something more sterner to her. I'm not saying he needed to, like, cuss her out in front of everyone or yell at her. But there's a stern way you can speak to someone, and none of those kids would have heard because they're in their own world, right? Looking for their toys. So, but I was like, he still could have done it in a way to where it was like, no, you're not interrupting the event. It's okay. But I guess he didn't want to necessarily piss off the mother already because she already didn't really want to come in. And she just kind of caved because she saw how much her child wanted to come in. So I guess he was just like trying to let it go at that point. And the poor mom, she had like a rip in her stockings and, you know, worn down shoes. So he did feel bad about the situation. And so after they left, he of course turned to her and was just like, you know, you could have let them stay. They weren't hurting anyone. But again, I still feel like he could have said it a little sterner to her. We switch to the POV of Savannah Page. I absolutely love it when books do this. So, this is what was going on from Savannah's point of view and for her period of time, what she's been going through. So, Savannah's from North Carolina. She has an ex-husband named Colt. She's got a cousin named Kay who has an apartment, which is where she's been staying. Kate's job took her away to someplace, and thankfully, her and her son get to stay there. They still have to, feed themselves and stuff like that, and it's still expensive because that's a major city, New York City. Okay, but what she's been doing is she's trying to get back into an office space. So at this point, she's working through temp recruitment agencies to try and find work. She's had to work at a grocery store, but it's like it's not paying enough. And, she wants to be able to get enough money for her and her kid to have their own place. And working there isn't going to cut it. So she's definitely trying to get back into that office administrator type of role. So she was on the phone with one of those recruitment agencies when Jacob was like doing the whole should I go in or not into this toy store. And again, she was a office manager back in North Carolina. So again, that's the reason she wants to get back into that. Savannah had taken Jacob to like Rockefeller's to have, they had a hot chocolate, just a really nice evening. And she had wound up walking onto Fifth Avenue, and that's how they got in front of this ritzy toy store. So anyway, we find out that what happened was she had asked Candace what was going on in the toy store. And Candace had told her, and that's when she was like, oh, let's get out of here. And when they got outside, the kid had a hard time breathing, and she had to give him his inhaler. So the little boy also kept saying to her, Mommy, I've seen him on TV. And she's like, huh? He's like, I've seen him on TV, that guy. And she's like, sure, honey, sure, you've seen him, So then he asked her, can we come back next week to visit the store? And her thing, she of course would love to buy him something from a place like that. So it makes her feel bad that she's, you know, not able to do so. But at the same time, he could have just had a free toy, you know. So I'm kind of pissed with Savannah for like rushing them out of there and he couldn't get his toy. But anyway, but Candace was being a bitch, and to me, Tobias was being a bit of a pussy. So right now, I don't like the adults. They all suck. That's just my little opinion. Um, so we find out that her life with her ex-husband Colt was awful. A lot of bad memories. And apparently the child was a witness to these things as well. And she wanted to give him happy memories. And I'm like, well, that's when it becomes fuck your pride. And you should have been like, oh, he wants to go in. Let's go in. Have a nice time. You know what I mean? That's my whole point. She's a mess. But anyway, so she's concerned she might have to do a waitressing job in the evening. She really doesn't want to do that. But it might come down to her having to in order to put food on the table. Kay, her cousin, has a cleaning lady whose name is Rosalie, and she kind of helps her with childcare because, Savannah can clean her own place. Well, clean the place herself. So that's been a really big help for her. Um, but at the same time, just kind of like, you don't have to pay rent. I want to know, I mean, don't get it twisted. I understand that everything's elevated in the city, especially in New York City. But I would think not having that huge burden of rent, it should be a little bit better for her. Even if she does have like a basic job, because you're not paying for like all the other stuff that you normally would. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. I could be wrong. Savannah and Jacob go back to the apartment. They put up this little 2-foot Christmas tree that she had bought at Walmart. They eat pretzels and Oreos and they decorate the tree and they have a ball. So then that Monday, she gets a phone call from one of the agencies saying that there's a temp job available. Could she do it? Of course, she's like, absolutely. It's an office job. And they were like, make sure you look good because it's in a really, ritzy building. And she's like, okay. So she has on a black suit, but it's not a black suit because it's like two different blacks. But she was like, it's close enough. So she goes to the Stone Enterprises building, goes in, and feels automatically right out of place. Everyone looks impeccable. She meets a woman named, I think it's Brioni. That's what I'm going to call it. Her name, Brioni. And she basically needs her to do, she's going to scan items in. There's like a slew of boxes. And she's going to scan all these documents in. And so it's a 3-week gig. And the woman shows her how to do it. Real brief type of a situation. And then that was kind of it. Boom, boom, boom. So she's energized, because now she's thinking, oh my gosh, she works up until Christmas Eve. She might really be able to buy her kid like something really nice for Christmas. Now, Christmas Eve, Rosalie is going to be, I think, out of town with her family, but she's pretty much like she'll deal with that when she gets to it. She was more so, just didn't want to say anything that could prevent her from getting that job, you know. So she didn't even ask how much she's getting paid. They didn't tell her when lunch is, like nothing. It was just like, here you go, this is what you do, go for it. So she's working super fast. She's knocking out more and more and more. And she's like probably needing to slow down because it's like if you do everything, it's like what are they going to give you to do for the whole 3 weeks? You know what I mean? But she goes to the bathroom before her lunch and she runs into who she calls Morticia Adams, which is Candace. And she remembers the woman from the toy store and she's like, um, oh my gosh, when she sees her. And of course, Candace is like, what are you doing here? You know? And she told her she was working, a temp, and she's be here for a few weeks with Brioni. And Candace gives her a very well welcome, but it was like super condescending. And of course, Savannah's like, I hope I don't see her ever again. Candace goes into Tobias's office, tells him about seeing that woman from the toy store, and it's, with such elitism. It's insane how she talks about people, how she puts herself up, and, how she's so great, basically, because she has this great job. And, being his personal assistant is enough clout for her. It's like it gives her a certain status, and clearly that's all she's about. Um, he was just kind of like shocked because, of course, he thought about the little boy, and he was like, "Listen, who's ever gonna get the job done? That's all that matters." You know. Candace leaves, and he thought about the little boy and thought about going to ask her about him, and then he was like, "Nah, I shouldn't do that." um, and then he hears this boom, and he rushes in because he had walked by the office where she was. Um, and so he runs in, and she's flat on the floor, button done popped from her shirt. He can see her bra. She's got another ruin in her stockings. She was trying to get the boxes off of the top and fell. And he, of course, is like, "Are you okay?" She, of course, is like, "I'm fine, I'm fine." He's like, "You shouldn't be doing that. Like, you can really hurt yourself." And he's like, "That's the last thing I need is a lawsuit." No, he said the last thing this company needs is a lawsuit. And she, of course, is like, "I would never do anything like that." And he goes, and Brianni comes in, and she's, want to know what's going on. And he told her, and she's like, "You have to call maintenance to give the extension. But she didn't give that girl all the information. You know what I'm saying? So at the same time, Savannah wasn't trying to get her in trouble. And so she just kind of said, you know, it wasn't her fault. It was mine. I thought I could handle it, and I didn't. When Brioni left out, he did ask her, how was her son? And she said, "Oh, he's doing okay." He had said something about seeing, with the child with the inhaler. And she's like, "I guess all the excitement brought on the attack." And he's kind of thinking, "I've never known excitement to bring on asthma, you know. But that he doesn't say it, and he just kind of leaves out. And he decides he's going to call over Naomi for a release, which is the name of the escort that he uses. We switch back to Savannah's POV. She goes to talk to Brioni to let her know that she is so sorry. She wasn't trying to get in trouble. Brioni's like, "Don't worry about it. Everything's fine. Just make sure you call for maintenance. And then Brioni tells her something that she, of course, didn't realize, which was that, Brioni's like, "He's a hard boss, but he's not that bad or whatever." And she's just like, "He's your boss?" And Brioni goes, "He's everyone's boss. He owns the place." And she's shocked. And then she remembers her kid saying, "I saw him on TV." And the woman, Brioni, was like, "How long have you been in New York?" And she was like, "Just since summer." And then it was like, oh, so she doesn't know about, the who's who of of the business world, especially in New York City. She doesn't know. So then she tells her to go to the security office to get her badge so she can just come right in, and she won't have to wait for her every morning to come and get her so she can work. And so she goes to the elevator and gets in, and yes, freaking Tobias Stone is in there. He's going up to the 30th floor. Well, regular passes, I guess, a regular security only gets you up to like the 28th or 29th. The 30th floor is his penthouse. So she was like, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't know X, Y, and Z. So she just waits, goes all the way up with him, and has to wait in order to come back down. Of course, she feels a prickle with him, but she doesn't know if it's just nervousness. Especially now that she knows who he is. She didn't know before, but now she knows, and it's making her a little antsy. Um, and when he gets out, her stomach does flips, and again, she doesn't know if it's attraction or I'm just nervous about the fact that I'm in the elevator with my boss, with such like a powerful person. We switch back to Tobias's POV and we find out he's had a pretty rough day. Looks like the deal from the guy in Hong Kong is not going to go through, and that pisses him off because he doesn't like the idea of a multi-million-dollar deal slipping through his fingers. And he's in his penthouse, he's looking out, sheer amazement. He was a poor kid, dyslexic. People looked at him as nothing, and now look at what he's amounted to. And so it tickled him that the temp got a chance to see what most people never did. Because again, they can only go up so far. The only person that has access to the 30th floor is Naomi. Um, she's got a key, and he's thinking about calling her over because he needs a release. So after the day he's had, he winds up getting a call from Candace saying that Oliver Rothschild meeting is in like an hour. And he was like, shoot. So the car's downstairs. He's like, okay, I forgot. He's like, let me get ready. And the Oliver guy likes to go to strip clubs afterwards, which he's not really into. But now he knows he is definitely going to have to call Naomi. We switch back to Savannah's POV. Her and Jacob are at home. She's cleaning. He's watching TV, and then he starts yelling. So she comes rushing in, and he's like, "See, mommy, I told you, I told you." And she's like, "Yes, you did. You told me. I'm sorry, I did not believe you. And he says he was really nice, and she says, you don't really know him. How do you know if he was nice? And he's like, well, he was nice to me. And she again was with the, you don't really know if he's really nice. And the little boy was like, well, you always said that people that were nice are good people, right? And she's like, yeah, I told you that. And it was just so adorable because she's trying, like, I get what she's saying. You don't really know, but from a kid's perspective or anyone's perspective, all he knows is this little portion of what he's seen of the man. And the man has been incredibly nice to him. You know what I mean? So that's all he can go off of. Jacob then told her about the fact that he had, told him he could, pick out a gift in the store. So apparently she didn't know about that. So I'll give her a tad bit of grace since she didn't know about that. Just a tad. It still was something that the man clearly wanted the child to be there, so I'm still a little pissy with her about that. But anyway, I digress. So then she tells him that she's, working for him. And he's like, what? You're working for him? He's like so crazy. So he's like, he wants to go to work with her. It's all crazy. And then the little boy's like, you all can get married and then we're going to be happy. And she's like, you're not happy now? He's like, no, I'm happy, but mommy, you all would get married and you'll be really happy. So she, of course, ain't thinking about getting married. She does not want to go down that road again. And she kind of had to explain to him sometimes people are nice to you and that's great, but it doesn't mean anything else. And she did make a comment how people can be nice and then they change. And she was just kind of like, no, the little boy was like, are you talking about daddy? And he was like, I never want to see daddy again. And she says, me either. And so she's like, that's why we moved away. But she hates that the kid still has those unfortunate memories. And that is sad, that is. We fast forward 2 weeks. She's doing a great job. She can't help it. She got through all the damn work. She blames her mommy brain. She's so used to having to multitask that she's able to handle a lot of stuff. So she's in the office with Brioni now because she's done scanning, and Brioni's got some other stuff she's having her do now. And they're having a little conversation, and people talk about Tobias Stone. Okay, there's like a reverence with him, but at the same time, a lot of sexual innuendo is happening as well because he's hot. So Brioni is kind of like, I mean, I can understand people being crazy about him. He is a billionaire, but he's far from my type. Well, then there's silence, and it's because our boy Tobias Stone has just pulled up to their office, and he is furious and tells them to come with him now. So they go to his office, and Savannah, and there's a Dalton file that's missing, and she's like, well, I wrote every file that I scanned down, so I'll just go get my notebook. She, of course, doesn't like this whole rude shit, and it pisses her off. It's giving bully energy, and she doesn't do that too well because kids have bullied Jacob on the playground, He uses an inhaler, and so they bother him about that. So she goes and gets her list, and it's not on there. So Brioni's like, well, maybe Matthias has it. Sometimes he takes files and he doesn't tell anybody. She's like, I'll go check. So she goes and check, and she's actually, while Savannah had left to go get her notebook, when there was a conversation between Brioni and Tobias where he was like, you hired her from a temp agency. She could be some type of spy. You know what I mean? Just all kind of stuff. Well, anyway, so Brioni comes back with the fucking file. And guess what? Matthias had it. The whole time he had it. Do you think he apologizes? No. He pretty much is like, okay, well, bye. So now Savannah's pissed. And she's like, where's the apology? And he's like, what? Brioni gets out of there. She's like, fuck this. I'm out. So she's talking to him. Savannah is, and she says, you need to apologize. Because what you did, you accused us of something that we didn't do. And he made a comment about being the type of boss he can do what he wants and all this type of shit. And if she didn't like how he ran his company, she could leave. And so when she went to open the door to leave, she saw Candace's face, but the door got closed from behind her. Now, he didn't touch her, but he was close. She could feel his body heat, and it sent a thrill through her. And he was like, I'm not going to talk to the back of your head. And she was then like, I got to go, and she got up out of there. Savannah goes back to Brioni's office, and she, of course, is like, what happened? And, Savannah's like, I almost lost my job, but it's cool, And she tells Brioni tells her about the Christmas party that's being held at the plaza. And she's seriously considering it. So eventually Savannah asked her, so basically, when am I getting paid? And the woman was like, oh, they didn't tell you? You don't get paid until January. So after the assignment is complete is when they get paid. She thought she was going to get paid before Christmas, so this puts a little damper in her plans. She does have some savings, and she'll just have to dip in there to try and make the Christmas special for her and Jacob. So now she's really not too sure she's going to go to this ritzy affair at this point. So we switch to Tobias, and he's with Naomi, and she's like, you were kind of rough tonight. And he's like, was that too rough? And he's like, did I hurt you? And she's like, no. I like it that way. She's like, but I could tell something else was going on with you. And she asked if he wanted to talk about it. And he was like, no. He gave her envelope full of money. And we find out this is her only client. Like, he pays a really, substantial amount of money so that she doesn't fuck anybody. She's basically on call for him. And that's it. So I'm like, okay, all right. But once she starts trying to talk, he don't like that, you know? It's like, you gotta go. So he finds out um, that he's having a hard time when it comes to Savannah because when they were in that office, she had called him a bully. And he was like, I'm not a bully. Like, that's not true. And we find out that 4 years ago, he lost the love of his life, his wife, Ivy. People kept telling him, time heals all wounds, it gets all better, but for him, it's been years and at this point, he feels nothing. He does, however, want to apologize to Savannah because it doesn't sit right with him that she called him a bully. He just doesn't like that. He knew he was wrong for jumping to conclusions. So he's thinking, okay, at the Christmas party, he'll make it right then. This year, our boy Tobias has decided not to go to a tropical place, which has pissed off Naomi because normally this time of year they go away. And he was thinking about going to, I think it's called Mystique. So she's super pissed at him. So he's driving along. Well, let me say this correctly. He's in the back seat. His driver, Morris, is driving along. And he looks over and he sees Savannah. And she's in this long line. He tells the driver to pull over. And he's like, what is this line for? And the driver says, I think it's for a food bank. And he was just kind of like, oh. Because stuff was starting to kind of make sense now. So when she made that comment to him, if I could quit, I would. But clearly, he can see worry on her face, and he just decided to tell the driver, just go ahead, just drive off. We switch back to Savannah and we find out what happened. So, Rosalie was going to keep Jacob, but because her grandson had got sick, she wound up leaving a couple days earlier. I want to say to Brooklyn. So she wasn't going to be able to go to the party, and Brioni was trying to get her to come, like super, like she wanted her to come so bad, but she didn't have anyone to watch her son. So she stopped by the food bank to help them with some food to maybe hold them over into the new year. She had dipped into her savings to buy him some really nice gifts. And so for the next 2 days, even though no one's really going to be in the office, she's going to have to bring Jacob to work with her. She ain't got nobody to keep him. So, the baby's super excited because he's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to work with you. And she's super nervous. She's trying to keep him away from everyone, especially Mr. Stone. We switch back to Tobias Stone, and he's at the party. And of course, he's looking for Savannah. He wants to apologize, especially after he saw her earlier, right, in the food bank line. So Candace comes up. She's a little tipsy. She's getting a little talkative. She's crossing the line. And she does this from time to time. And he's got to wheel her back in to let her know nothing's going to happen and you need to chill out. Everyone thinks that Naomi is his actual girlfriend and he prefers it that way. So it works. Besides, he pays her enough to keep her mouth shut. So it shouldn't be a problem. So then he goes and finds Brioni and tells her something. He brought up the thing about with the file. And, how he shouldn't have assumed X, Y, and Z. And Savannah's a really good worker. And when they finished talking, right before they finished their talk, she had said that she wanted to try and extend her contract for another few weeks, because she's been nothing but a godsend. And so then he asked about, no, she had said something about, the temps asking about when they get paid. And she was like, oh, they don't get paid until after the new year. And he's like, well, that's crappy, they don't get paid before Christmas. And Brioni's like, yeah, that's just the way they handle it. And he was like, well, that's a problem, She looked really shocked, because it's kind of like, why he asking questions about her, And so he doesn't remember his family ever having to go to a food bank, even though they didn't have a lot. So of course it made him think about, her son and how, she's got a lot on her plate, and he wonders where the father is, and he's just like, she's got so much to deal with, and he just doesn't want to add more, you know, drama to her plate. We switch back to Savannah, and they're going to leave a little earlier because she's trying to beat the rush as well as like get in before everybody. So she's thinking, okay, I'm just going to try and walk in with Jacob and see if she gets past security. That doesn't work. So then she tells the guy that Tobias Stone already cleared it, but if he needs to double check Tobias Stone, then feel free. Well, the guy fell for it and let her in. So they get in, and she kind of tells him, if I'm out of the office and someone comes, go hide under the table, And so she's working, she's doing her stuff, and she gets a call from Tobias Stone. Come to my office. So she tells him, I gotta go see the boss. The little boy, of course, he wants to go, right? And she's like, no, you can't go, X, Y, and Z. So then she goes, and he apologizes to her, and that shocked the shit out of her. And he was saying, it's just in his line of work, being, kind of difficult to trust people and stuff like that. And she was just kind of like, that's a sad way to live. And he's like, well, it's necessary. So she left. They went on pretty good, and then the little boy got hungry, and she had forgot to pack their lunch because they had left so early. So then she's like, okay, she's gonna go across the street to go get some sandwiches. He was afraid at first to be by himself, but she did the whole "you're a superhero" thing, and he was like, okay, I'm Iron Man. He's like, okay, mommy, 10 minutes, you promise, right? So she runs into Candace on her way out. Candace, of course, is like, you're in a rush, and she's like, yep, and she darts across the street. A meeting that was supposed to take 40 minutes took like over 2 hours, and so Tobias is so annoyed. Candace comes in, wants to know if there's anything he needs. She sees the Tiffany box on his desk, and she's like, oh, I guess things are, going pretty good between you and Naomi. He doesn't say anything. Um, he told her to get with Herman in accounting and have him pay Miss Page before the end of day tomorrow, because the next day was going to be Christmas Eve. And she's like, well, that's how they handle it, like the temp agency, they don't pay into the new year. He was like, that's not what I told you. I told you I own this company, get it done, that's it. And so he let her know, let me remind you, your role is a PA, that's it. So she hushed up and left. And then we switched to her POV, Candace's, which I liked because I was like, oh my gosh, it's always nice when they do the two people, but when they do more, I get like super excited. It's like a natural high for me. I love it. So Candace is just kind of like, she calls and makes the arrangements for her to get her paid. But then she's like, let me go see what that little mink is up to. So she goes to the office. She can't get in at first. She sees a chair in front of the door, but she's able to get in, and she sees the little boy. And the kid looks terrified, and she starts smiling because in her brain, she's like, I got her. And I was just like, she's so goddamn evil, but she wants to find her something on Savannah because I think it pisses her off that it's looking like he's possibly a little soft for her. There's another knock on the door. Tobias's door. It's Candace. She opens it, and she, of course, has the child and is kind of like, look what I found. And he looks at him and he says, hi, Jacob. And the boy's like, hey, Mr. Stone. And I was like, that's just so sweet. And the little boy was like, please don't make my mommy go away. And he's like, I'm not going to do that. And Candace was like, we're not running a daycare here, So he told Candace to leave, and she started to say something else, and he said, you need to leave or else. So then she got her ass out of there. And then Savannah comes running up because she couldn't find him in the room, and she hugged him because she was so terrified something had happened. she had dropped her purse and her sandwich. And she's like, oh my gosh, I was so worried. I thought you were hurt, And then he told her, it's really no problem. I promise you, it's okay. And she didn't believe him at first. She was just kind of like, I'm sorry. She's like, I had someone lined up, but she got called away. He's like, again, it's okay. It really is okay. And she, of course, was like, thank you so much. And he saw her let her guard down when her kid is around. And at that point, he just wanted to help her. And it kind of freaked him out. Because he's like, why the hell do I want to help? So Savannah goes home that night. She's tucking Jacob in. And of course, he's like, this was a fun day today. He loves it. So he's ready to go in the next day. And she's kind of sad because she knows tomorrow's her last day with the job. And we get a little background. We find out she was married. She married Cole really young. Colt, not Cole, Colt. Really young. And she had Adam like early 20s. And so the first 3 years of their marriage, Colt was he was pretty good. And then he lost his job and he became depressed and just everything just went downhill after that. So in her mind, she's kind of, she's enjoyed working at Stone Enterprises and she is sad that, it's coming to an end. The next day, she goes in and Tobias comes by, but he's dressed down today. He's got on slacks and just a shirt, not his power suits. And he's talking with Jacob. They're having a good conversation, talking about toys. And she's kind of wondering, like, his situation, like if he's married, if he has children. And then Candace, but she doesn't ask this is all in her head. So then Candace comes in and was just like, I've been looking for you, talking to Tobias. And he's like, well, you found me. What do you want? She's like, well, I was leaving and I wanted, I'm only working a half day. And so I want to, tell you Merry Christmas. It wasn't that big of a deal. I'm like, she need to calm down. So she said to Savannah, nice to meet you, and she leaves. So then Tobias is getting ready to leave. And he's like, I got some work to do. And then Jacob's like, Mommy, I'm hungry. And she's like, okay, we'll go, I'll get some sandwiches. And Tobias is like, I can watch him while you go. And Jacob didn't want to go with her. He's like, yeah, let me stay with him. And she felt like he was pitying her. And she doesn't like pity. So she feels like, you know, she gets it from Kay and from Rosalie, the pity. And Brioni doesn't know all about her life. So it's just kind of, she just doesn't want pity from anybody else. And so she's like, he's been cooped up in here all day. It'll be good for him to get out. So he leaves, and when they're on their way out, she's telling Jacob, you got to stop talking to him like that. He's like what? And she's like, you're talking to him like he's your friend. And she said, well, he is. He's nice. He's a nice person. What am I doing wrong? And the heifer didn't have anything. She didn't have a comeback. She's like, let's just go get some hot soup. So Tobias had asked to see her before she left, because she was working a full day. And he was like, he's going to be there late. So she goes and sees him, and he offers her like an extension on the contract, like basically working up until the new year. He's like, it was Brioni's idea. And she, of course, was also ecstatic because he told her, oh, and you're going to have your money in your account today. And she was just so thankful and so happy. She didn't even know what to say. So then, right when she was leaving, he said, you weren't at the Christmas party. And she was like, no, I couldn't get childcare. And what did he say? He thought it was because of the accusation about the Dalton file. And she's like, no, 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 it had nothing to do with that. So then we switch to his POV, and he's intrigued by Savannah Page. and he hasn't been intrigued by anyone since Ivy. And so the thing with him is once he sets his sight on something, dude kind of goes after it. So it's Christmas morning. Our boy Jacob is having a blast with his toys. They get a call from Arnold, who's the doorman. So Savannah goes down, and there's like this huge gift basket and some other stuff as well. And she, of course, is like, "What in the world?" She knew it wasn't from her ex-husband. She know it's not her parents because they already talked to her and they sent her money with some cash. So she knew it wasn't them. So she's like, "Oh, it must be Kay." So Arnold helps her take the stuff upstairs, and Kay doesn't even know Arnold's name, or if she knows it, she doesn't use it. So Jacob and Savannah, they've always stopped by and talked to him and have always been so nice to him. And she gave him some stuff out of the gift basket. He, of course, didn't want to accept it at first, but she was like, you've been so sweet to us, and she just wanted to be able to, pass it forward. So then we switched to our boy Tobias. He's drinking whiskey. It's like 3 in the morning, and he's got on his, slippers, his robe. He's in a really dark place. He doesn't want to see Naomi. She's been calling and texting, trying to see him, and he just has no desire to see her. And he just kind of wants to drown in his sorrow. I was like, oh, poor thing. We switch back to Savannah, and she calls Kay to thank her for the gifts, and Kay's like, that wasn't me. And Kay's at some type of Christmas dinner, like a speed dating type of situation. Um, Kay doesn't like to be alone. She likes companionship, and she will seek it out very quickly. She works a lot, but she plays hard as well. So they're on the phone, and she's saying that she got this stuff, and Kay's like, "Well, maybe you have a secret admirer." She's like, "Kay, I don't have that. Like, no, that's not happening." So she's like, "Well, keep me posted. Let me know." So then she gets off the phone, and Jacob goes, "Mommy, I know who this is from. It's from Mr. Stone." And she's like, "How do you know that?" And he says, "Well, when we were at the toy store, he said I could have anyone that I wanted, and this is what I was playing with." And she's like, "Oh gosh." So she, of course, felt this whole pity thing. It felt too much. And she started thinking about it because she's like, there's no way, Brioni could have authorized her to get her money before January. So she knew it was him. And it started to feel like too much of a handout that he was giving to her. And she's like, we can't accept this stuff. And that broke Jacob's heart. Jacob's like, why? He gave it to us. And she didn't really have a good answer because the baby had a rebuttal for everything that she said. But what she decided to do was he had enough toys, so she was going to give the toy back. But the food, they could use it. It was good food. It was already prepared things. This was a massive amount of stuff. This was going to last them for days. And so they were going to have an amazing Christmas, but she just can't accept too much from one person. It's just she can't do it. So Savannah goes to work. They had a really beautiful time eating that food up and everything, relaxing, watching TV, spending time with Jacob. And then she goes back to work. She walks in and she takes the toy and sits it at Tobias's front door. And then she goes to Brianni's office. Brioni's in there, and she had files that need to be scanned, and so she come in to do it. And so of course Savannah's like, I can do that for you. Um, Brioni's getting ready to leave out because she's going to hit the slopes. So Savannah thanks her for getting her the extra time, the extra work, and the fact that she was able to get her money earlier. And Brioni was like, oh, okay. She's like, he was asking about that at the party, about, when you would get paid. And she's like, I guess, he's, softening up. He's got a conscience in it. He's got some type of conscience. Now Savannah didn't say anything else. I don't think she didn't mention the gifts. She felt like, that's probably not something I should talk about. But she is just feeling a little raw with everything that's happened. She goes into work the next couple of days. The first day, no sign of him, right? Second day, Most of the day she didn't see him. She figured he didn't come in, so she figured she was going to get the gift and leave. Because now, in my opinion, if you done ate the damn food, you could have let the boy keep the fucking toy. Especially being the fact that this was the same toy that he was playing with at the place. So it's not like you don't know anymore. The kid told you. And at the same time, the guy said, he could have a toy, and he actually got it for him. And you decide he's already got too many toys, you're gonna give it back. But you ate the fucking food, and she's been giving it to Rosalie plenty of stuff because it was so much. But yet you trying to take the toy back. It's like you're in a bad situation. It's not completely horrible, but you're not in a really good place financially. Okay? You're at a place where you need a lot of help. And that is the reality. And it's just kind of annoying that she wants to. It's like, okay, but this is just too much. But you went to a fucking city where the only person you know is your cousin, and she's not even there. But thankfully you have a beautiful apartment you live in. You don't have to pay any rent. It's like, I don't know. I guess I understand not wanting people to pity you, but you're in a kind of a pitiful kind of a situation, So, you know, people are trying to help. You're raising this kid by yourself, and people want to help. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And she's making it out to be about her pride. And it's like, your fucking kid doesn't get all the things that he would like to have. And here's someone that's saying, hey, he can have this. He doesn't have to go without. And you're deciding, no, 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 no. No one should give us anything. I don't like the stupid shit. I don't. So anyway, she goes and by his office, and guess what? The gift is gone. And then she hears, "You're looking for something?" He looks disheveled. And he tells her, "Come in my office." So she goes in, and he's like, "Why did you return Jacob's gift? I bought it for him." He's like, "I told him he could have a gift from the store." And she kept going, but, you know, about, we bombarded your event and all this type of stuff. He's like, none of that matters. I told him he could have a gift, and this is what he wanted. So the only way I'm going to take it back is if Jacob doesn't want it. And she couldn't find any reason because he knew the child wanted it. So she went dumb with her thought. She couldn't think of anything. And it's just kind of like, why you didn't bring it all back? You know what I'm saying? But you done shared a lot of the stuff with Rosalie and gave stuff to Arnold. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, she didn't have a leg to stand on, and she knew it. She absolutely knew it. She feels very on edge with him, and he sparks a fight or flight reaction within her. And again, she doesn't know if it's sexual tension or if it's just edgy weirdness. She's very discombobulated around him. So she just says happy birthday, and she gets out of there. We find out the reason that he had come into the office, he'd been doing a lot of drinking, not sleeping as much, and he decided today he did feel a little better. He figured he'd come in and get that Tiffany box that had the gift in it to go return it. So he was shocked, of course, to see the toy, and it pissed him off. So as he was leaving out, sure enough, she's waiting at the elevator. She's got like clothes and stuff that she had bought for Jacob and stuff on her lunch. And so she looked bogged down, and normally he would have probably helped her, but he was pissed. And so he didn't. And he could have even given her a ride or called a cab for her, but he's like, nah. He went cold. So she asked him how was his Christmas, and he just went, Christmas is Christmas. And so she leaves out, and she's like, well, have a good evening. And he goes to the Tiffany store to return the earrings and necklace that he had bought. And we find out he had like this moment, and he bought this for his wife. Okay. And he just wanted to return it. They, of course, are trying to sell him other shit. No. The big boss comes out and she's like, the money will be credited back to your account. It is the holidays. He's like, I don't care about the money, you know? And then she says, well, Valentine's Day is coming up. You might want to look at our selection. And he's like, my wife's dead. She can't use the earrings and the necklace I bought her. And that shut him up. And again, I guess it was maybe a tortured moment he had. I don't know. We know he's married. We also find out he has parents and a brother named Xavier. He's been ignoring them. They're doing Christmas in Aspen, and he just wanted no part of that. So finally, Savannah makes it back home. Rosalie is very perceptive. She's like, I thought you took that in a couple of days ago, the toy. And she's like, yeah, I'm bringing it back. Someone from work had got it. And Rose is like, you returned someone's kindness? She's like, yeah, but he can have it now. And so then she says, she talks about the basket. And she's like, oh, that's a very good company. You need to stay there forever. So, of course, Jacob's excited because he gets to keep his toy. And was like, Mom, tell Mr. Stone thank you. And she's like, I already did. And he's like, no, but tell him again. Next day, she goes in the office and she sends him an email. She figures that's safer. Plus, he's probably not going to be there anyway. So she puts on a Taylor Swift playlist from YouTube. And she doesn't have it super loud, but enough that she can kind of walk around the office and dance. She's having fun, and sure enough, our boy pops up at the door while she's dancing her little ass off. And he had this smirk on her face, and he told her he needed help with this Word document template. It didn't look like the other ones. And so she was like, okay, I can fix that. No problem. So she goes in his office. She fixes it. And he's so close to her. And she's like, can you kind of back up? So he backed up. And what did she ask him? Um, she asked him something. I can't remember. Um, but she finished it really quickly. And she's like, it wasn't difficult to do. It didn't take any time at all. And so he was kind of hovering over her. And he's like, let me back up because I know you don't like when I, hover over you. And Hoover, I think I'm saying it right. I don't know. And she's like, no, it's fine. You're fine. So she says to him, you're a control freak. So it is what it is. And he's just kind of like, nobody talks to me like that. And she's like, they're probably afraid of you, but she's only got one day left, so she don't care. So he tells her, I got your email, and she's like, yeah, Jacob really loved the gift and was super, it superseded all the other gifts. And he really wanted me to make sure I told you thank you. And he's like, oh, I wasn't trying to supersede his other gifts. She's like, no, it's okay. It'll be his favorite gift until he finds something else that he wants. But she knows that's gonna be his favorite toy for a very long time, because he had a Spider-Man that he was crazy about, and he kept that thing around, even if it was freaking right, like it was run down. He kept it, so she knows he's not gonna get rid of that toy. But she decided she needed to get out of here because she was not trying to have any more conversation. Tobias has been getting a lot of text messages, phone calls from Naomi. She's been trying to see him. Their agreement is supposed to be when he calls, she's supposed to come at that point, not her calling to see him. So he's working and he answered the phone without looking at it. And it's her saying, I'm upstairs, I'm waiting. So now he's furious, right? So he goes upstairs to his penthouse and he's like, what are you doing here? And she's like all dressed up in this sexy outfit. And he's just pissed. And she's like, well, you're not answering my calls. And he tells her, we have an agreement. When I want to fuck, I call you. That's it. This is not a relationship. I told you that. And she's like, I mean, I know that, but I was just so worried. But it's like, what you being worried for? Y'all not together. Does he care about any other aspect of your life? No. So why are you caring about it? I'm just saying. So it's kind of like, someone says, people can say, okay, I don't want a relationship, and then their actions might be something a little different. But I feel, just go off what they say. That's your safest bet. So if he ain't been calling you, but he's still paying you, the fuck are we worried about? What are you worried about? Get your free money, you know? But what happens a lot is you're being intimate with one person. She's apparently not screwing anybody else because that's a part of their contract. So something has developed on her end. Clearly, nothing developed on his end because this is what it is. Which is why if a dude ever tell you that, or if a female ever tell you that, that shit's not changing. Because for a person to tell you that, they see nothing with you. Like, so unfortunately, she's a escort. I mean, she probably thought if I'm the only one he's screwing, he's got to feel something. But no, it's just a matter of being safe, right? He can screw you probably raw and not really have to worry about anything if you are, abiding by the agreement that you all have, which is you're not supposed to be messing with nobody else. But I mean, I kind of feel bad for her because I'm quite sure she didn't mean to feel anything. You don't have control over your feelings. You just have control over your actions. So I feel bad for her a little because he's being mean to her and she's all caring about him. Because remember the last time they were together, she could tell something was wrong and he didn't want to talk to her about it. It was like, no, like, what are you even asking me for? You know what I mean? So at some point, you got to take a hint, right? So I do feel bad for her, but at the same time, nothing about him has said, you know, he cares about your opinion or that he trusts you to tell, to say what's going on in his life. Like, he doesn't talk to you. So it was kind of like, I don't know what the fuck you spazzing out about. Now, I could understand if she's spazzing out because if there's someone else, right? So that could fuck with her money. So then I could understand her being a little bit more like, wait a minute, what's going on? Because if this man is paying you a substantial amount of money to be just his one, I can understand you not trying to lose that compensation, right? I get that. It's still funny to me. So he told her to get the hell out. And he tells her again, basically, if you call me or if you show up again like this, like he's going to break it off, you know? And so she gets up. She's like, I understand, she ain't trying to fuck up no money either. So they go downstairs in the elevator, 21st floor. He gets out. He runs smack dab into Savannah Page. So Savannah gets on the elevator and it's just her and Naomi. And Naomi's not making any kind of contact, and Savannah's, you know, checking her out, right? Kind of looking at her, this woman is like impeccably put together. It makes her very conscious of the fact that she's wearing these sensible shoes, this worn down handbag. She's thinking like, okay, maybe I need to maybe treat myself to a new handbag or something or some shoes. You know what I mean? Because it's like, this is his woman and I'm like nothing like that. So she goes back and what did she do? When she got back later that day, she talked to Brioni, I think via text message, and she's like, listen, if you finish up early, you can go ahead and you can go. You know what I mean? And she gets a call from Tobias saying he needs help with a document again, right? So then she goes in and she sees lipstick on his cheek. So she does the document, and then she tells him he has lipstick on his cheek, and he wipes it off. He still looks really tense. So she asked him, she was just kind of like, the gift that was on the desk, like, did your wife like it? And he lost it. He goes, you think that woman was my wife? And she's just like, oh, I'm so sorry, like, I didn't know. And she like got out of there. So his wife died in a car accident years ago. And so, I mean, okay, she doesn't know that. But again, I think he's so used to people wanting to know about him, wanting to know about his life. So he probably assumed, which is why you shouldn't assume, that she's looked him up, right? So she knows this stuff. And little does he know is she doesn't know. She had no clue that he had lost his wife. She's thinking he still wears a wedding ring. You're getting off the elevator with this, this woman. She looks impeccable. This must be his wife. I mean, one and one is no. I would think the same thing. Savannah goes back to the office and she Googles him and finds out about the car accident. And of course, now she gets it, right? Why his reaction was so big. Um, so we don't get any more detail. She did see that there was like, I guess there was like a court case or something, a part of it. I don't know if he was accused of something. It doesn't really go into detail, but I'm quite sure we've got two more books after this one, so I'm sure we'll get more answers. So then he gets a call from. We switch back to our boy Tobias, and he gets a call from his brother Xavier, and Xavier wants him to come out for New Year's Eve, and so he reluctantly agrees because Xavier was like, Mom was really worried about you. And so then Savannah comes back to his office and she apologizes. And she's just like, I'm so sorry. I didn't know about your wife. And she was like, I'm sorry for saying that Naomi was your wife. And so then he grabbed her arms and said, don't ever speak on my wife again. And he just saw her like crumble before him. And he knew he had gone too far. And he had, because he didn't have to fucking do that. Like, first of all, you shouldn't have been grabbing her. Second of all, she's letting you know she had no fucking clue about the fact that you lost your wife. She didn't know that. She's letting you know I had no clue about that. And then for you to grab her. Now, true enough, he doesn't know that she was in an abusive relationship. But still, it doesn't matter. You shouldn't have put your fucking hands on her. Because she's coming to try and make it right. And because you're all wound up in your bullshit. Not to say that losing someone is bullshit, but he's a fucking asshole too. It's like he had no right to do that, and that was absolutely wrong. And so she, of course, got the hell up out of there. Savannah had been able to avoid Tobias for the most part, but she did wind up running into him probably around 4ish after she talked with Brioni. Um, she had sent an email saying that Savannah had sent to Brioni. Let me be clear. She had sent an email saying, it's been so wonderful working here, all this type of stuff, because she thought this was her last day. So Brioni called her and was like, what are you talking about? She's like, I extended your contract for another month. I plan on keeping, trying to keep extending it. And she's like, I need a lot of help. And she's like, oh, I didn't know. You know what I mean? She had no idea. And she, Tobias apparently knew about it, but he didn't say anything to her. He didn't say anything to her. So she's like, oh, okay, well, thank you. She's excited. And so she told her about mistaking Naomi for his wife. And she was like, oh, gosh, you didn't know that? You know about his wife and stuff? And then she had to remember, I forgot, you didn't even know who he was. Savannah's been able to kind of avoid Tobias for most of the day. Around 4ish, she talks to Brioni because she had sent Brioni an email saying, it's been so wonderful being here and all this type of stuff, writing like it was her last day. So Brioni calls her and it's like, what are you talking about? I extended your contract, you know? She's like, I extended it for like another 3 or 4 weeks. Like, I plan on trying to keep extending it because I need a lot of help. And she was like, oh, I didn't know that, you know? Um, she told her that, because Brioni was shocked to find out that Tobias had even been in the office. She's like, oh, that's weird. That's not normal. And then Savannah told her about what happened with Naomi and her mistaking her for his wife. And she was like, oh my gosh, you know? So, again, the girl she didn't know. I feel bad for her. But anyway, so then of course Brioni's like, the plot thickens. So you know how you have in any type of it could be any type of work type of situation where people are trying to figure out who's screwing who, you know? So clearly they're trying to figure out his love life because he doesn't give anything. So they're trying to figure it out. So Brioni told her, listen, go home early. It's New Year's Eve. Spend it with your son, you know? And she's like, okay, at this point, she's like, you know what? I'll do that. So she goes to the door, and Matthias walks in, and he introduces himself. They have a little chit chat conversation, and he asked her what were her plans for New Year's Eve, and she said she didn't really have any, and then in walks Tobias. So Tobias comes in, and Matthias had asked, Savannah if she wanted to come out for drinks. It's going to be other people, that aren't going home if she wanted to come through. And she agreed because she doesn't have to rush back home because Rosalie's with Jacob. So she's like, yeah. So Matthias is like, okay, meet me in 20 minutes. How many ever uh, offices down from Tobias. And she's like, okay. So then Matthias leaves, and Tobias is like, can you help me with another document? And she's like, okay. So she goes, she fixed the document, and she said something to him. What did she say? It was something about. No, he was saying little slick stuff. He's like, I know you're in a hurry to like leave. And she's just kind of like, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? And she's not trying to have any conversation with him. And I understand why, because he was in violation earlier. He was completely in violation. So I completely understand her not wanting to really talk. I'm not even going to knock her. So then we switch to Tobias's POV. He's furious at the fact that she was so easygoing with Matthias and that she's going to have drinks with him. And he's also pissed that he hasn't got a chance to, because this is the following day after what happened earlier. I don't think I mentioned that. He hasn't been able to like get her to talk to her about what happened to apologize. So someone was knocking on the door. He didn't answer. And they knocked again. It's his brother Xavier. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt anything. And Tobias is like, why do you think I didn't open the door? So the guy is already drunk, and he starts bringing up Naomi and all kind of stuff. And Tobias is just like, I'll have to have you look at whatever it is next week, you know? And she was just kind of like, I can have Candace, I'll show Candace how to do this. You know what I mean? And he's like, no. He tells her, when I want you to do it, I'll ask you to do it. Like, I don't want you teaching someone else to do it. Like, I want you to do it. And I'm like, okay. So the Xavier guy was like, hey, you coming out with us tonight, And Tobias goes, no, she got a better offer. Real salty. And so he's pissed. She's going to leave out. Xavier is, not Xavier. Tobias is like, he hopes he does not regret going out with Xavier. I'm like, if he already lit and you're not in the mood, it's probably not going to end well. We switch back to Savannah's POV, and she's not going to go have drinks with Matthias. She's decided, she's going to go home and she's going to spend time with her son. So when her and Matthias are outside, she tells him, I'm going to go home and spend time with my son. And he's like, oh, you have a son? And she's like, yeah. And he's like, you can come and share just a few drinks, it just won't be me, it won't be awkward. She's like, no, it's okay, maybe another time. And he's like, okay, I'll hold you to it. So we gave her a kiss on both cheeks. She left. So then we switched to Tobias's POV, and he's watching this whole interaction. And Xavier is like, isn't that your temp? And he's like, she doesn't work directly under me. And Xavier's like, well, Matthias looks like he's into her. And Tobias is doing the whole, like, I don't care thing. But in his mind, he's like, I need to drink. So Tobias is at this rooftop, new place, hip, and I think it was called Oasis, and he is just throwing back these whiskeys. And he's ready to go. He's just not into it. He winds up asking one girl if she wants a drink because she had been staring at him. He was staring at her because he was trying to figure out how she kept her dress on. I said, I can't. He wanted to ask her, like, is it tape? I think her name was Larissa. That was hilarious to read. So then he starts walking and he sees this thick brown hair and he's thinking this might be Savannah. So he taps the woman on the shoulder and he says, oh, I thought you were someone else. And then Candace pops up and she, of course, is like, you know, what are you doing here? Like, totally shocked to see him. He does notice that she does look very different outside of work, but he's not checking her out. He just kind of looked at her and she smiled because I'm thinking she's thinking, like, oh, he's looking at me. So then Xavier comes over and wants to go to some new place. She, of course, is down for it because it's like, it's hot and hip, it's exclusive, it's members only. And if she walks in with Tobias and his brother, oh my gosh, like, she would be at the top of the world. And so Tobias is like, nah, I'm just going to go home. And so Candace is like, well, I can call Morris, you know, which is his driver. And he's like, no, I'm good. I can get my own ride. I can take care of myself. I'll just get a cab. We switch back to Savannah. She's at home with her kid, and she knows she made the right choice. She prefers being home with her child. So she decides to do some more research on our boy Tobias. And so she pulled up his picture. She gets a call from Kay. They talk. Kay is, like in Hong Kong, they work even harder. And so she can't wait to come back. She's scheduled to come back this summer. And so whenever she starts talking about coming back, it makes Savannah a little antsy, because she knows she needs to get her own place. So she had gotten an email from another agency offering her a gig from like February into the summer, and it could lead to something, permanent. Well, we'll say it full time, right? It means the same thing. So she's like, you know what? Let me go ahead and let me put in for this because I don't want to just put all my, eggs in one basket in case, Stone Enterprises can't give me a full-time position. She wants to have something else lined up. And that was very smart. I completely agree with that move. If she can't get a place, she might have to move back home with her parents. And her parents live in the same town as her ex-husband Colt. And, she doesn't want to be within a 10-mile radius of that man. You know what I mean? So she feels like she's got to make this work. So she gets off the phone with Kate. She had left that screen up of Tobias, and so Jacob saw it and was like, his wife died? And she's like, yes, sweetie. He goes, oh, that's why he's always sad. He's alone. He seems like the sweetest child ever. He really does. And he says, whenever he smiles, it never reaches his eyes. And he goes, I think he's sad about his wife still. And so she says, yeah, I think so too. And then she tells him, after he's like, it makes Jacob really sad. And Jacob's like, is something ever going to happen to her? And she promised him it's not. And then she wanted to lift his spirits. And she's like, we're going to go ice skating tomorrow. And thankfully it did. We switched to Tobias's POV. He's decided he's not going to do any work today. He's just going to go walk around the city. He's gotten a text message from Naomi. All it said was Happy New Year. She apparently has gotten the hint. So then we switch back to Savannah. They're out at Bryant Park. They're skating. They're having a ball. She's really thankful for this. She's hoping that she can at least do this with him through the winter at least once a month. Jacob sees Mr. Stone, and he starts waving all crazy. So they go over to him, and Jacob is just so enthralled by him and tells him how much he loves the Iron Man, and how they really enjoyed his other gifts, and just rambling on. And then he wanted Mr. Stone to skate with them, but thankfully their skating time ended, so Savannah was like happy about that. So then Jacob's like, "We were gonna get hot dogs. Do you want to get hot dogs?" And he's like, "Okay, sure." So he's like, "I'll go get them." Ask them what they wanted. She at first tried to go, "No, I'll pay." He's like, "No, no, no, I got it." So they go, they eat their hot dogs, and they wind up, after she goes and returns the skates, feel a little, she thinks about Naomi a little bit and feels a little about that. And I think with her, it's been so long since she's liked someone, it probably freaks her out. And I don't think she knows it's like if I like him or if it's just because it feels different. You know what I mean? She doesn't, it's been a while for her, especially if it's so different from even like the really good times that she had with Colt. That feeling feels a lot different. Jacob wants to spend the day with Mr. Stone. And she's like, "We can't do that. We just can't force people to like spend time with us. Like, you gotta chill. And he's just like, "Why can't we? We he likes us. So anyway, they're eating the hot dogs. Hers is kind of got the onions and relish, and she's thinking like, "Damn it, why did I get one so messy?" So then Tobias ate his. Savannah only took little small bites, and Jacob finished his, and he was ready for another one. And Tobias was gonna go get him one, but she was like, "Oh, no, 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 he can eat mine. I'm not that hungry." And so she gave him hers, and then he's like, "I'm thirsty. I want something to drink." So she had some water. She gave that to him. He drank that up, and he asked her about how did her night out go. And so the baby got done with the water and wanted more, and she asked him, she switched the subject, and she said, "How was your night with your brother on the rooftop?" And he just kind of looked like, you know, she's asking me about that. Like, it shocked him that she had even asked about his time. Like, he just never anticipated her doing that, because I guess what she gives off is, "I don't give a shit." So she leaves to go get some more water for Jacob. And Jacob says, "I'm really sorry about your wife." And normally he gets all, pissed off with people. But again, I think coming from a child's innocent in this case. And it didn't bother him as much. And he was just like, "Yeah, I do miss her a lot." He's like, "I'm sorry." And he says, "You always seem so sad." He's like, "Yeah, I do miss her." And I was glad he didn't freak out, because then I was like, "You're crazy." But I think he loves children. So after his conversation with Jacob, it made him feel a little sad, and so he decided he was just gonna let them have their day. So when Savannah came back and she was all down for him to come with them to have hot chocolates, he was like, "You guys just enjoy yourselves, maybe another time." And Jacob was like, "Okay, maybe another time we can go skating." And he's like, "Sure." And it warmed his heart knowing how the little boy looks at him as a friend. It's so sweet. He's just a really sweet kid. It's like kids that are so sweet like that, it's like they can't help but bring out just like, oh, you can't help but be that way with them. And he also knows that the conversation he wants to have with Savannah is just going to have to wait for another day. So the next morning, it's back to the grind, going back to school for Jacob, her going back to work. So she woke up from a dream where her and Tobias were like naked, lying on each other, and the same leather jacket he had worn at the ice rink was thrown around. So she gets in, she talks with Brioni. Brioni's like, "I'm trying to work something out on getting you something permanent. I don't have any set details, but I'm going to try and submit a proposal to Matthias so we can get something working." Um, so the company that Savannah replied to want to set up a interview with her. So again, she's glad she kept those options open because again, Brioni is trying. That doesn't mean she's going to be able to do it. And so it was good of her to do what she did, which was reach out to that other company. Or shall we say respond to him. So she gets a call from Tobias and he wants her to come to his office and she's like, I'm in a meeting with Brioni. And Brioni's like, oh no, we're done. You can go. So she gets off the phone and she's like, what does he want? Like, what does he want? And she said, I don't know. I helped him a few, last week with a few templates and stuff. So it's probably just that. So she's getting herself prepared to see him. So she goes in the office, she fixes his document, and while she's fixing it, he tells her he had a really good time yesterday. And she's like, yeah, Jacob had a great time too. And then she asked, what did she ask him? She asked him what was he doing there because he had stated he lived on the Upper East Side. She's like, that's pretty far. And he's like, well, I walk. I had a lot of things on my mind to clear my head about. And then the phone ring. He doesn't answer it. She looked and saw it was Candace. She's like, it's Candace. And he says, I'm still not answering it. So then there's a knock on the door. And then no one answers. So Candace just comes in. And he screams, I'm busy. And she's like, he said, I don't care. Not now. So she leaves out. And then he's like, what were you going to say? Because she was about to say something to him. And he noticed that she had looked at his lips. And so then Matthias comes in and he's like, what? I'm busy. So now Matthias was telling him how the guy from Hong Kong, the company that they were trying to go after, the guy's in New York and he wants to set up a meeting. And he's like, have him set something up for tomorrow. And Matthias is like, I thought you really wanted this guy. You really wanted this. And he's like, I am in a meeting. Like, set it up for tomorrow. So then he leaves out. And he wanted to know what the hell Savannah was going to say. And so Savannah was like, well, I fixed the documents, so I got to go. And what did he, oh my gosh, what happened after that? She had made a comment to him that, I can show Candace how to do it. And he told her again, I want you to do it. So I'll call you because I want you to do it. Well, she got out of there. And he told Candace, he called her and was like, go ahead and set something up for today. We switch back to Savannah and she winds up running into Candace. And Candace got a bunch of files and stuff. And Candace is like blocking her. And she's like, what were you doing in his office? She's like, what are you talking about? She's like, in Tobias's office. What were you doing there? And she's like, he asked me to do something for him. And it's like all these questions. So Savannah wants to kind of play with her. And she's like, he wanted me to look at a Word document. And she's like, I could have done that. And Savannah's like, well, I would think so. If you're a PA, you should know how to do it. So she doesn't know if Candace is worried about her just being around Tobias or is she worried about her job. And it could be a little bit of both, honestly, I think. I think it's a bit of both. So she leaves from there and she also told her, I'm just a temp, so you shouldn't even be worried about me, and she left. So what happens? Matthias comes out of the office and he's like, Savannah, you're still here, this and that. And he's like, you might need to get a desk on this side. And she's like, oh no, I'm good where I am. And Tobias comes out and that's when she says, listen, I'm happy in my 218 room. I'm good. And Tobias is just kind of staring at her. It's so intense. So Candace leaves. And then Matthias left to go get his coat. And Tobias says to her, we weren't done talking. And she says, we weren't? He says, we weren't. And then Matthias comes back and she says, good luck, and walks off. That girl's like, I am not talking. Savannah goes home. Jacob's like, did you see Mr. Stone today? And she's like, why do you always ask me that, And it's because he wants to set up a skating, date, He said that he would do it. So old boy wants it done. So then he also told her about like some kid named Carson who's been bullying him because he has to um what did he tell him? He says because your daddy doesn't love you or something like that. Carson's parents are together and he makes this comment. I'm like, some kids are just fucking evil. I'm sorry. They just are. And he had basically said like your dad hates you. And so she's got to tell him he doesn't hate you. He's just, he has some issues, X, Y, and Z. And we find out a little bit of information. Colt was a foreman at a factory, and then when that factory shut down, he got really depressed. But he wouldn't take any other jobs, like a forklift driver, anything like that. His pride was just beyond. And I was like, well, he ain't shit, because if he got a kid and he doing that, and he ain't shit. So it was funny and it was cute while she was trying to like kind of describe this to him. And I feel bad for the little boy because it's like you don't want to think your own parent hates you. You know what I mean? And it feels right when the little kid says it because your dad doesn't reach out to you and doesn't try and have a relationship with you. So I feel bad for the kid. So Tobias and Matthias had just left with the meeting with the guy from Hong Kong, and Tobias is like, he's desperate. I don't like it. And Matthias is like, you have been trying to get this guy forever. And he's like, yeah, but he shut everything down before Christmas. Now all of a sudden he wants a meeting. He just pops up in town and wants a meeting. Off rip. He's desperate. And he's like, he's going to go with his gut, especially when Matthias says the guy is like courting other people. He's like, yeah, he's desperate. And he's like, I'm not moving forward with it because I don't trust it. He's like, my gut served me right all this time, even though Matthias was like, but you don't trust people. He's like, yeah, but it served me right all this time. So it is what it is. So they get to Stone Enterprise building. They see Savannah Page come out. She looks different. Girl done got her hair done. Girl's got a nice wool coat on. She looks good. And Matthias is clearly checking her out. And so she comes over and Matthias is like, we should really get that drink this Friday. And she's just kind of like, maybe we'll see, I'll think about it. And she hauls off and Matthias and Tobias get in the elevator and Matthias is like, she's looking real different. And Tobias is like, she looked normal to me. So then we switch to Savannah and we find out she's got that interview and that's where she's headed to try and get that long-term temp job. So she took her lunch break. She's going to take some extra time and then she'll stay after like, an hour later to make up the time. So Tobias does his weekly meetings on Fridays, not Mondays, because he feels like Mondays people are thinking about their weekends. And so on Fridays they're focused because they've had the week pass by. But I kind of feel like they're going to be thinking about their weekend. So I don't know. But anyway, so Brioni is talking to Matthias after the meeting about the position for Savannah. They're going to try and iron it out next week. He overhears and he knows she's going to be working late because of this. And so he goes back to his office and later on he calls her to come and see him. She goes in to see him and she's like, is there another document you need? He's like, no. He tells her he's sorry for what happened the other day. He was wrong for getting upset the way he reacted. He shouldn't have grabbed her. It was wrong. She was like, apology accepted. Because again, she's trying to get out. And he said, you dress, what did he say? Like how nicely she was dressed. He's like, are you going out? Is that why you're in such a rush? Do you have a date with Matthias? And she's kind of like, where do you get that from? He says, well, he asked you out for drinks on Christmas Eve. And he was like, I see how easily you all talk to each other. And she's just like, maybe if you act better, it would be easier to talk to you. And she's like, besides, like, why would he ask me out? Like, where is that coming from? There's no way. And he was like, well, he asked you out for a drink. She's like, yeah, but I didn't go, you know? And then he says, I can't stop thinking about you. And she's like, what? And he tells her, ask me a question, ask me anything you want. And she's like, I don't have anything to ask you. He's like, that's not true. Ask me what you want. And she's like, but you have a girlfriend. He tells her she's not my girlfriend. And he tells her she's an escort. I pay her for sex. At first, she looks disgusted, but then she looks turned on at the same time. And he's like, I told you anything can be bought. And she's like, not everything. And so they were so close. And she winds up slapping him. And so he grabs her wrist. And he's like pretty much wanting her to admit that, you know, she wants him. And they wind up kissing. And he didn't do the aggressive approach. It was nice and supple, and they just melted into each other. And so, like, she pulled away, and she was like, I gotta go. And she got out of there. Savannah gets back to her office, and she's got her head against the door. She's so frazzled, and she now knows this shit is not one-sided, okay? This is clearly feelings on the same, or at least some sexual tension on the same. Both are feeling this shit. Well, then her phone starts buzzing. It's Rosalie. The baby's in the hospital. Rosalie had to call the ambulance because he couldn't breathe. She gets to the hospital, and we come to find out his little ass has not been using that inhaler like he should have. But there's also been a buildup in him, and the mucus has gotten to the point to where he could barely breathe. So he's got to stay in the hospital for a few days. So she's worried about money because she never applied for like government assistance. And so now she's worried about the bills. But at this point, all she can focus on right now is the baby. She's thankful for Rosalie. She had to force Rosalie to take like money for a cab because Rosalie was going to take the subway. She's like, no, you take a cab, you know? And Rosalie, she's like, I think of him as my grandson. That's how I think of him. And I'm like, that's so happy that she has people, you know, just a beautiful soul, you know? So she's not going to go to work for a couple days, and she's going to think about the baby. She just can't process anything with Tobias right now. So Tobias has been pent up all weekend. He got a text message from Naomi asking if he wanted his key back, and he thought perfect timing because he's done with her. So he had Morris go and get the key, and he can't wait for Monday to come so he can talk to her. So he sent her an email. She never responded. He wound up going by the office that afternoon and found out she's not there. He asked Brioni about the full-time role, and she kind of offered up that, you know, Savannah wasn't in today. And he's like, oh, okay. So he can't say anything else. He's just got to literally just wait, you know, to see what her response is going to be to the emails and about what happened on Friday. Savannah gets the bill. It's a little over $3,500. She's freaking out. How is she going to pay this? She paid off one of her credit cards, but then she cut it up, got rid of it. And she's still working through another credit card that's got like a $10,000 balance. So she's terrified. Like, how is she going to pay this bill? Now, first of all, this is going to be my little critique. You do not have to pay that bill in a few weeks. They do have payment plans. Okay? So I don't see why she was freaking out this bad about. I mean, I understand it's a bill, it's another problem. I get it. But again, you can set something up. Okay? Just saying. Well, then she calls Colt, and that bitch won shit. He was just like, oh, he always was a little weak little thing, and I don't have any money. I'm still not working, and da 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 da. And I'm like, what was the purpose in you calling him? You know he ain't got no fucking money, you know? And even if he had it, he wouldn't give it to you. You know? He don't even call the child. The child's birthday passed not too long ago. Do you think he called him? No. He doesn't give a shit. Even tried to insinuate the child might not be his. Piece of shit. She calls her parents. Doesn't really want to ask them for it. And the dad was telling her how, you know, he's going to take the mom on a cruise and stuff like that for her 60th birthday and shit. And, you know, she was, thankfully, she was like, it was like, no, I'm not going to ask them for anything. And I'm like, no, you shouldn't. Because it's not an emergency. You shouldn't put that on them. So I was like, good, don't worry about it. Well, now she's thinking I'll ask Tobias for the money. And I'm like, this gonna cause a problem. This is gonna cause a fucking problem. I already know it. She goes to work. She's decided she's gonna ask him for this money. Okay? She's gonna ask him for an advance. So she saw where he had emailed her, and then she went to go see him, and Candace like, he's not here, and she's like, what do you need? And she's like, I need to speak with him. And she's like, about what? None of your business. So she leaves and she runs into Tobias, and they go up to his penthouse, and she asks him if he would be willing. What did he say? He thought she was going to talk about the kiss, right? He had been anticipating this conversation all weekend. You know, he's like, that's all he's been thinking about is that kiss. And then she goes, I ran into an emergency and I was wondering if you could advance me $3,500. So automatically it comes across as if she wants his money, which is what he has feared and what he fears with everyone. They just want him for his fucking money. He knew Ivy didn't want him for his money because he met Ivy when he had shit. And, he got it as they were together. And he thought Savannah was different. And so he's cruel to her. And he says, and you say nothing can be bought. And he says, what is it? You want to come up here and work off the debt? I mean, he was going in because he felt like because he had told her Naomi was a escort, then that's what she was willing to do. And I mean, it was just awful. It was so awful. And she told him, you're sick, you're twisted. But I'm like, you should have said the money was for your kid. Like, why not start off with saying, it's for your child. He was in the hospital, X, Y, and Z. He adores that child. Why not say that? Even though she didn't ask to keep money, she asked for an advance. And he should have looked at that as well. I will say that. So she leaves. She runs out of there and goes to her office. So Tobias is all pissed off, pent up for the rest of the day. Matthias comes in before he's about to leave, and he was like, you were really hard on my managers today in the meeting. Like, what the hell? Tobias goes, they need to produce more results. It was just a mess. So then Matthias was like, he told him I signed off on the full-time person for Brioni. Tobias is like, why did you do that? He's like, well, you weren't around. And then Matthias says, it's a shame what happened with their little boy. And he goes, what happened to her son? And he said, well, he was in the hospital this weekend. And he felt all the fucking color drain from his face. He had gotten it so wrong. And now he has got to figure out a way to get her back. Because she's like, she never wants to talk to him again. And he's got to find a way to make her a deal she cannot refuse. And that is how it is. So the next book in the series is called The Offer. And we're going to dive into that next week. What did you guys think? I love this. What I loved so much about it was that at first, there wasn't these sparks. It was just like, they were at that toy store. She saw that he was handsome, but there weren't these immediate sparks. And, a lot of our books, they'll start off so they felt it, whether they act on it or not, they feel it immediately. I like that they didn't feel it immediately. It felt more natural. It felt more as I come around you, the more I'm getting more intrigued by you. I like that aspect of it. So I really love this. I'm just so, I want to know what he's going to offer, how he's going to get her back. I'm so invested now. Let me know what you guys think. Drop down in the comment section and let me know. If you are in the market for a beautiful notebook or journal, I do have those available, and the links are going to be available down below in the description section. Make sure you like and subscribe and share. And as always, I truly do thank you all for your support, and thank you for tuning in to the Always Reading Book Club.